Understanding U.S. Border and Immigration Policy under Trump: Asylum, Detention, and Expedited Removal. Hello. If you're thinking about traveling to the United States, you may have heard a lot of rumors and misinformation. At IRAP, we want to answer some questions you may have about the border. Our answers are based on current U.S. government policy and what we know so far. Something important to mention before continuing is that everybody's situation is different. This is general information for educational purposes only, and it is not legal advice. This audio was recorded in August 2025. You can visit the IRAP website by scanning this QR code for the most up-to-date information. Section 1. Current Border Policies. What is the current policy at the border? Since January 20th, 2025, the United States government has made many policy changes that affect people at the U.S.-Mexico border. Many of these changes are still developing, and it is unknown how they will be implemented at the border. The changes are happening very quickly, and there is still uncertainty about what will actually happen. Today, we want to share what we know so far. First, CBP-1 is no longer available. The CBP-1 mobile app is no longer available for scheduling appointments at the border. The U.S. government has canceled all appointments, and there are no new appointments available. Currently, there is no other way to schedule appointments to present yourself at the border. Second, the MPP, or Remain in Mexico policy, has returned. MPP was a policy during the first Trump administration whereby asylum seekers in the United States had to wait in Mexico while their cases were resolved. These individuals were transported to the United States to appear in immigration court and returned after the hearing was over. This process lasted months or even years. Who was enrolled in MPP? Non-Mexicans attempting to enter the United States without authorization, or people who surrendered to the U.S. authorities. In January of this year, the U.S. government announced that MPP would be returning. The government enrolled some people in the program, but we don't know under what circumstances those people were enrolled or what happened to them. A U.S. court has blocked the return of MPP for some people, and it is not clear whether the program is operating. Third, special parole programs have been canceled. Parole programs such as those for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans are no longer available, so even if you qualify, it's no longer an option to enter the United States. Fourth, the border between the United States and Mexico is closed. The United States government has said the border is closed. There have been reports of people being turned away or quickly deported without any legal process. Section 2. Asylum Updates. Now I'm going to share some important information about asylum. Although it's nearly impossible to access asylum right now, if circumstances change and you have the opportunity to apply for asylum, or if in the future you are enrolled in MPP, this information will be relevant. What is asylum? Asylum offers protection to people who fear returning to their country because they have suffered or fear persecution or serious harm. The harm can be physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological. Who can qualify for asylum in the U.S.? You may qualify for asylum if you have suffered or fear harm for reasons related to your identity that cannot be changed. These include your race, nationality, religion, political opinion, or membership in a social group, such as sexual orientation. People who only leave their country due to poverty or widespread violence do not qualify for asylum. People who have been deported from the U.S. usually do not qualify, but can apply for other protections that are similar but harder to obtain. How do you apply for asylum? Asylum is a long process that requires an application. It's not something you are granted as soon as you cross the border. Previously, one of the few ways to apply for asylum while entering the country was to enter legally with a CBP-1 appointment. Generally, people who entered with an appointment received a date to appear in immigration court, where they could submit their asylum application. This is no longer an option. Currently, there is no legal way to enter through the border to apply for asylum. The vast majority of people who manage to approach the border are immediately returned. Section 3. Entering without permission. So now let's talk about what can happen to people who enter without permission or illegally. People who enter without permission will be subject to expedited removal and detention. Expedited removal is a process that allows the United States government to deport certain individuals quickly. This process applies to people who attempt to cross the border without permission and are caught by government officials. It also applies to people who voluntarily surrender to immigration authorities. It's important to clarify that surrendering and attempting to enter without permission are the same thing. Either way, you will be subject to expedited removal. If you attempt to approach an official border crossing without a visa or valid entry documents, you may also be subject to expedited removal. An important policy change worth mentioning is that anyone who has entered the United States without a visa or other legal document within the last 2 years may be placed in expedited removal proceedings. In addition, the U.S. government now argues that anyone who was found by immigration authorities within 2 years of their entry to the United States, even if that entry was many years ago, can now be put into expedited removal. This includes people who entered with a CBP-1 appointment. Under the expedited removal process, you can be deported to your country of origin or, in certain cases, to another country. If you are told you will be deported to another country, mention if you are concerned about being deported to that country and explain your reasons. Tell the officers about any vulnerabilities you may have, such as medical conditions, if you are a woman traveling alone, if you are traveling alone with your children, or if you're part of the LGBTQ+ community. A frequently asked question is, can I apply for asylum while in expedited removal proceedings? If you are afraid to return to your country because you fear for your life, you must tell a U.S. official so you can receive an interview. At the interview, the officials will decide if you qualify for asylum or other humanitarian protection. It is your responsibility to express your fear of returning to your country because the officials will not ask you directly. If they ignore you, request an interview to explain to an official why they should not deport you. Section 4. What to do if you are detained. Now let's talk about detention and what you can do if you are detained. If you try to enter the United States from the southern border, you and your family will almost certainly be detained while government officials begin the deportation process. Here are some important points. The most important thing is to be prepared. If you are detained, you will be taken to a detention center where you will be held for several days or months in some cases. If you are traveling with family members, they may separate you and send you to different detention centers. For example, you may be separated from your partner, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and even minors, unless they are your biological or adopted children or you are their legal guardian. Your belongings will be taken from you, so it's important that you and your family memorize important phone numbers, including those of relatives in the United States. Also, mail copies of your important documents or evidence to someone that you trust. If you are afraid to return to your country, tell every officer you speak to so you can receive an interview. Remember, they won't ask you if you are afraid. You have to tell them. If English or Spanish is not your native language and you don't speak it well, you have the right to an interview in your language. Ask the officers for a list of free lawyers and contact them. It's important to insist that you want to speak to a lawyer and request access to a phone. From detention centers, you can dial 9233# to reach legal services or report abuse. Conclusion. Finally, we know this was a lot of information, and we're sorry that we couldn't provide more encouraging information, but this is the current situation at the border, and it's important for us to share what we know. Please remember that every person's situation is different, and there are many factors that could affect what may happen to you, and your experience may vary. For the most up-to-date information, please visit the IRAP website.